Welcome. Changing my camera. Welcome, everybody. Adjusting one more time. Good enough. Okay, it's a little high. I'll live with it. Welcome, everybody. John Aravosis here, June 19th. Hello, all. Give me a second, as always. I'm adjusting my wires. That's pretty good. The brightness, it's bright today, but I don't want to go see if I go really bright. It looks better for you, but then it's like bright in my eyes. I think I will survive at this. Bright, but not too bad. Anyway, hello, all. How are you doing? Let me get TikTok rolling here. Go live. Excellent. All right, there we go. Okay, TikTok is rolling. Cool. Hello, all. Yep, I didn't even... Usually I like to write a few notes on my notes before we start. Hey, TikTokers, let me just do this briefly. I like to sort of make a little notation so I know when a story flows over to the next page. This one does. One moment. Hello, TikTokers. I'm just jotting down on my notes here. Ready to begin. Introduce yourselves, guys, if you would, as always, which you know I like. There we go. Okay, that's good. That's good. I got my notes. Haircut. It is a haircut. Yes. A couple days late, Susan. I got it this weekend, but yes, I got a big haircut. But Mom says she approves, which is the big test. So that's a good thing. Hey, Anthony from Ireland. Anyway, how everybody? Woo. Busy day today. Hot in DC. Although it's 80, claiming it's only 86 right now, which I'm a little surprised. Hey, Jen. Thank you for the gift. Thank you, Ginger, as well. And Jane and Elizabeth and Chazak and Richard. So many gifts. Thank you, guys. Excellent. Yeah, it's hot everywhere. It's a little hot. It's a little early hot, to be honest. But yep, haircut this weekend, Doc. I did. Decided to go short. My haircutter conned me into it, and I was pretty happy, actually. I'm still kind of playing with it, but it's I shouldn't be playing with it while I'm live on the show, because God knows what it'll end up doing. But yeah, I'll stop messing with it. I'm already looking at the camera going, eh. Anyway, 59 in San Francisco. That's wild. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Ava. Thank you for the gifts, guys. Anyway, what's going on, guys? Actually, I will say, for starters, for fun, I'll pitch it at the end of the show, but we've got new auctions going up. The auctions finished last night. We did very well. Thank you all for helping. But I want to show you one thing that James got us, who was volunteering. Very nice English guy who's joins our show, in the audience, was volunteering in Ukraine for 3 weeks and got some really cool stuff for auctions. The coolest thing I will show you is basically a Lego knockoff. They're not Legos, but they're a knockoff of a Bayraktar, which is the Turkish drone that's caused so much damage against the Russians, the really famous Turkish drone that the song Bayraktar, remember about? But it's really cool. It's a Lego knockoff, but the best part, and of course, for the Ukrainians, it says ZSU at the top, which is the abbreviation of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Ukrainian flag, the trident, although the trident is written as ZSU, which is actually really cool too. The best part about this, we're auctioning these off, by the way. The best part about this, it's made in China. The Chinese are, Angela, we should talk in a second. The Chinese are selling to the Ukrainians mock-ups of the drones that are killing the Russian troops. The Chinese are making money off of basically honoring the weapons killing the Russian troops. I think that is the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. Thank you, Succeed. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Nicholas. Is that just it just so epitomizes China. You know what I mean? Like they're evil. They're communist dictators. They're supporting the Russians in a genocidal war. But at the same time, they're making money honoring the weapons that are killing their Russian allies because China. Anyway, thank you, Christine. Thank you, Angela. I just think it's the best thing. But anyway, these are over at the, I've only got one auction up yet. This one's for our VIP auction. This one is for folks who subscribe to our monthly subscriptions on YouTube, Discord, and Ko-fi, because TikTok's broken and TikTok refuses to fix it. The TikTok connection to Discord doesn't work. So I apologize, guys, but for the monthly subscribers on TikTok, there's no way to bid on this because TikTok won't fix it, and I don't quite know why. But anyway, it's very cool. It's very cool. All right. Thank you, Martin, as well for the gifts. Anyway, it's very fun. All right, let's get rolling, guys. So today is day 846 of Putin's special 3-day military operation. As always, please do keep the gifts coming. Your guys' gifts help pay for my work because I do this full time. You help me pay the bills. Last night, you guys were ridiculously generous. Thank you for that. Please keep it up. Let's get rolling. So Putin is in North Korea right now. Actually, he may have just left North Korea and arrived in Vietnam, actually. But he was in North Korea today. Thank you, Charles. North Korea, as you know, is probably the worst dictatorship in the world. I think probably is probably even being too lenient. They're the worst dictatorship in the world. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Rune. They are Russia's ally in this war. The North Koreans bailed the Russians out, providing as much as 4 to 5 million artillery shells to the Russians because they were running out. Thank you, Renegade. Thank you, Noteworthy, for the gifts. And the Russians have been helping the North Koreans out, which is a total violation of international sanctions against North Korea because of the nuclear program. The Russians don't care because the Russians don't care. Putin just signed a mutual defense pact with the North Koreans. I think nobody really quite knows what that means. Thank you, Renegade and Noteworthy, for the gifts. I don't think anybody quite knows what that means. There is some concern that the North Koreans may eventually send troops to help fight the Ukrainians. If that happens, honestly, I think things are going to get messy in terms of Europe. I don't think the Europeans can allow, frankly, North Korean troops to be fighting in a European war and get away with it. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Adventures. It's really dangerous. I mean, very dangerous if Putin does that. I thought one analysis, this was interesting. A former CIA analyst who's a director at the Wilson Center, Sue Mi Terry, said today that Putin's visit to Pyongyang highlights how two pariah states are cementing their ties despite their isolation from the international community. This was a great quote from her. She told BBC, "I think it is pretty pathetic that Putin has to resort to relying on the 198th ranked economy in the world to help his war effort." She did say it's all around bad news for the rest of the world, which she is very correct. Thank you, Mustard, for the hearts. Appreciate it. Adventures in Elizabeth. Okay, I got the rest of you caught up there. Anyway, I will say this too. I was watching sort of a guy on CNN, Kurt Volker, who's former U.S. ambassador, who honestly, I think he's a Republican. I think he's a bad Republican. He's a MAGA Republican. He was giving sort of weird answers on the whole thing of what was going on. Trump and Ukraine. Oh, we don't know what Trump will do. He literally cut off aid for 6 months, guys. Trump cut off aid to Ukraine for 6 months. Thank you, Jennifer, for the gift that Mama knows best got. Very, very sweet of you. Trump literally cut off aid to Ukraine for 6 months. And this guy's on TV saying, oh, we just don't know what Trump will do. Maybe he'll keep the aid going. No, he won't. He just cut it off. Thank you, Noteworthy. But I think it's telling. To me, it's telling that I see we're having fun today. Ash, feel free to boot. Oh, where is he? Where is he? Here he is. Feel free. Actually, yeah, that guy just goes. The Shane guy is gone. Now, again, my troll meter, the guy's a troll. He's an absolute troll. There's no way around it. He's probably paid by the Russians or somebody else. But at the very least is just a troublemaker. Thank you, Rocco. Thank you, Tom Weber. But you think about it, really. Russia is in a position where it's so desperate that it's got to turn to North Korea, and it's got to. I mean. By the way, let me put a larger picture on this, okay? North Korea is the worst country on the planet, literally. Thank you, Kevin. It is the worst dictatorship on the planet. All right, horrific government, murderous, crazy government, horrific people running that country. Let TikTok dare ban me for a week for saying the North Korean government is crazy and dangerous and murderous. They've killed millions of their own people, starving them to death. Horrific government. For Putin to ally himself with quite likely, actually, the worst murderous government on the planet tells you everything you need to know about Russia. Normal countries don't do this. Thank you, Joe. Normal countries don't do this. Now, the Chinese are also the biggest benefactor of North Korea. 90% of all trade with North Korea comes from the Chinese. So the Chinese tells you a lot about them too, right? I mean, criticize the West all you want. We do not associate with the worst, literally worst government on the planet. The worst dictatorship on the planet who's murdered millions of its people. Thank you, adventurers. Thank you, renegade. You know, I mean, we deal with people like the Saudis, which frankly is creepy. The Saudi government is creepy, but we also don't have a choice because of the oil and stuff. North Korea, North Korea is irrelevant. Everyone's got a choice when it comes to North Korea. You suck up to North Korea, and it speaks volumes about who you are as a country, whether it's the Chinese communists or whether it's the Russians. I just think it's interesting because it's so disgusting. It's so disgusting. Boy, Ash, you got your business. I was going to say, you've got your job cut out for you today. We're having, by the way, the Russian trolls are particularly pissed off today because I reported you guys last night about the crazy statement from the North Korean media talking about Putin and Kim and basically making it sound like they were in love with each other or something. I mean, it was really, really bizarre. Really bizarre. And I did a video on it, and the Russian trolls got pissed because God forbid you talk about Lord God Putin being in a gay tryst. It was funny. It was very funny. Oh my. Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. All right. The French far right. This is actually very interesting. So, you know how the far right, the extreme right, has been growing in Europe. They did very well in the recent parliamentary elections for the European Parliament. In France, this movement's been growing for 40 years. I mean, since the 1980s, with Le Pen. I forget his first name, Le Pen. It wasn't Valerie. What was Le Pen's, the father's first name? It wasn't Valerie. Le Pen. What was Le Pen? Somebody must know. Starts with an M, maybe. What was his first name? The crazy fascist father. No, Marine is the daughter. Jean-Marie. Yeah, Jean-Marie Le Pen was the father, or the father. Marine is the daughter. It's a fascist movement. It's a fascist movement. I mean, it is. It, like all the fascist movements in Europe, tries to present itself as being like, oh, we are simply conservative. You're not simply conservative. You're a fascist movement. Well, interestingly enough, the head of the fascist movement, for the election right now, thank you, Roy, kind of was forced to come out and say that he is in support of Ukraine, which I thought was fascinating. Now, only to a degree. He's still going to cut back aid to Ukraine, but not completely. It is to me, thank you, Red. It is to me very interesting that the fascist right in France, that, by the way, traditionally has been very close to the Russians. The Russians lent them money. It was really kind of gross what their connection to the Russians. That even the fascist right in France thinks they have to side with Ukraine, at least to a degree. And let me read you this really quick. This is from the Kyiv Independent. French far-right leader Bardella said he backs Ukraine but rules out sending troops or long-range weapons. My position has not changed, and that is to support Ukraine by providing defense equipment, ammunition, operational logistical support, and defensive weaponry to enable Ukraine to protect itself to hold the front. Jordan Bardella told reporters. Wait, hang on here. Let me see here. Oops. Oh, that's it. Okay, that's it for the story. I just think it's interesting. I mean, he's still talking about cutting back somewhat on aid to Ukraine. We're not going to send troops, which is the current plan under the Macron government, or long-range weapons, which is interesting, depending how you define long-range weapons. Are Storm Shadow, or I should say the Scalp cruise missiles, long-range weapons to him? I don't know, because they are sending that currently. But to feel that he had to come out and say, but we still support Ukraine, we will still provide them ammunition, weapons, that was interesting to me, that he felt the need to basically still be pro-Ukraine. That's a good sign for France overall, frankly. In other words, in America, to be a Republican now, a successful Republican, thank you, Charles, for the bling, you've got to be anti-Ukraine and pro-Putin to be a Republican in America. Now, yeah, there's Republicans who aren't, but guess what? You're not important if you aren't. you don't run the Republican Party. You're not generally a successful senator or congressman. I mean, some of them are pro-Ukraine and anti-Putin, but they don't really do anything about it. Like Lindsey Graham is pro-Ukraine and anti-Putin, but he just rolls over and plays dead whenever Trump wants to kill aid, and he lets him kill it. So it's interesting that in France, at least, they felt a little more importance there. Ukraine is about to finalize a security deal with the European Union. Ukraine, they've already got deals with 16 other countries, including the US, Japan, UK, Germany, and France, who signed bilateral deals. I'm not convinced what these bilateral deals mean. We talked about these the other day. I'm just not convinced, why these, I mean, they look nice on paper, but like the US deal can be killed at any time. Thank you, Courtney. Trump comes in, the US bilateral deal is killed. Right. So, any case, all right. That's our troll meter. I mean, Ashley knows because Ashley's very good, but this is our troll meter. Just get rid of him, Ash. Yeah, just get rid of him. All right. We got a lot of crazy people today. Very crazy today. Interesting. But again, remember when we get a lot of the crazy people coming, it's pretty much because the Russians are sending them, and it means the Russians are freaking out, which is good because it's a great sign. Oh no, there are a lot of trolls today, Swan. Yeah, and of course my allergies. Once I start the show, my allergies start going off, so my nose starts itching. It could be the full moon approaching. It usually means we're doing our job when the trolls come. Also from the Kyiv Independent, U.S. This was good. So more Patriot missile batteries, like the whole Patriot missile system, is probably going to Ukraine. Another one from the U.S. Listen to this. Oh, these are the missiles. More missiles from the U.S. There you go. U.S.-made missiles for the Patriot air defense system that were going to be manufactured for Switzerland are to be delivered to Ukraine instead, according to the Swiss news outlet Blick. According to Bleak, Bern has an order totaling $340 million from Washington for the PAC-3 variant of the missile. PAC-3 is the most advanced variant of the Patriot missile system. It's effective against ballistic missiles. Each missile costs $4 million. Sources told the outlet that the U.S. has decided to delay delivery to Switzerland and send them instead to Ukraine. That's great news. It's not an entirely new system, right? Because remember, the Patriot missiles, you got to have the missiles, but you also need the missile launchers, the computer system, the radar, like everything that kind of goes with it, because it's a whole package. It's not just like you fire the missile and it hits the target, right? You got to have the radar, you got to have the computer. They're not getting a whole new system of the radar and computer and everything else, but they're getting more missiles, which is still very helpful because they need them for Kyiv, they need them for wherever else they're going to put the system. So this is really good. Another interesting story that I think tells us something about how Russia's doing in the war. Thank you, Ignacio, for the gift. A couple gifts from Ignacio and Brian Blue Zone. I think this is interesting. Listen to this. Russia has moved almost all ground forces from Finland's border to Ukraine. On average, 80% of the equipment and soldiers have been transferred to the war in Ukraine, a high-ranking military intelligence source says. Again, the Russians are desperate. The Russians are not happy that Finland joined NATO, right? Finland was always non-aligned. Finland did not want to join NATO. I think we would have been happy if Finland joined NATO years ago. They never wanted to join. Putin invades Ukraine, totally freaks out Finland and Sweden both countries who have been non-aligned forever. I mean, Sweden, I think, goes back hundreds of years. Finland may as well, being non-aligned. Immediately turn to NATO and say, let us join, right? They're afraid of Putin invading them. Let us join. Disaster for Russia. Finland is now a member of NATO. I see Sammy's got the flag up. Is now a member of NATO. Check this out, okay? This is all Russia here. Right? This is all Russia. This is Finland. This is all Finland. Look at the size of this, guys, okay? I mean, it's equal to Russia's border down here, practically. It doubled NATO's border with Finland, at least. I mean, huge what this did in terms of to Russia. So this is huge for Russia. For Russia to decide to move 80% of its troops away from a NATO border down to Ukraine means they're in trouble, basically. Because I think at least strategically, Russia would not want to do that unless it was desperate and had to. Now, again, as I always say, This does not mean Russia's losing. This doesn't mean Russia will lose anytime soon. It doesn't mean Ukraine will win anytime soon. Russia still has the ability to cause a lot of damage and cause a lot of death in Ukraine. But I still think it's a good sign, if this is true, that they're being forced to move troops from the Finnish border, where they wouldn't want to move them from. They need them up there, to Ukraine. It means they're desperate, which is good. All right. A little more now. Northrop Grumman, an American weapons manufacturer. Northrop Grumman is one of the big, thank you, Red, is one of the big U.S. Defense contractors. Thank you, Jonathan. Making missiles and other weapons and planes and everything else, right? Thank you, Florian. Northrop Grumman is planning to produce ammunition in Ukraine in an operation bankrolled by Ukrainian money. Kyiv has been courting Western arm producers in an effort to localize domestic production and decrease reliance on foreign supplies. The Northrop Agreement is the first known deal of its kind between a U.S. defense company and the Ukrainian government for producing arms in Ukraine. That's good. Denmark announced its 19th assistance package for Ukraine, including financial aid for Ukraine's defense industry, equipment for F-16 fighter jets, that's pretty cool, and donations from Danish military stocks. Another pitch for the gifts, guys. Make sure you keep the gifts coming. Thank you, Stephen. I do this full time. I do it for a living. I've been doing it since the war broke out. And the way that I make a living and I'm able to pay my bills is with your guys' gifts. Also with the gift subscriptions on TikTok, the gift subscriptions, not the gift, but the monthly paid subscriptions on TikTok and YouTube. I was going to say, and you also can send gift subscriptions on TikTok and YouTube that other people can get. And it lets you join our Saturday morning show that's only for subscribers. It gives you access to some emojis. It gives you also a little thing next to your name, which lets me know that you're a paid subscriber. Just kind of a nice, little thing. Thank you, PC Noel, Red, Elizabeth, Papi Chulo, all for the gifts. Thank you, guys. Hey, Ryan Marks, good to see you. All right, let me find a little more here. I've still got a couple more, several more stories, actually. Oh, yeah. Okay, so a couple stories about Russian war crimes. Nasty stories, but they're important to tell, right? But nasty stories. This is from the Kyiv, both are from the Kyiv Independent. Ukraine's military intelligence has identified the Russian soldiers who executed Ukrainian prisoners of war near Zaporizhia Oblast's Robotine last month. Zaporizhia is the province that's down here, okay? Remember, all of this is occupied by Russia. It's this province down here. Now, the little more from the story, a video taken in the second half of May showed Ukrainian soldiers were made to lie down on their faces, after which they were shot in the back. These were surrendering Ukrainian soldiers. It is a massive war crime to execute, even to shoot, let alone execute soldiers from the other side who have turned themselves in, who have surrendered. You can't kill them, let alone harm them. After they've turned themselves in. The Russians had them lie down on the ground and shot them in the back, mafia style, execution style. The perpetrators were identified as Russian soldiers of the 70th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 42nd Motorized Rifle Division of the 58th Army, according to intelligence. I just wanted to read that because none of us know what that means, but I think it's important to get that information out there, just to have it be out there for the record. I also had the names of these guys. I'm not going to name them. Thank you, John S., because I'd rather know the intelligence is 1000% before I name somebody's name. Fair enough. But I'm going to trust them enough to certainly read the name of the regiment. The other story. So this other story popped up last week. I didn't mention it originally because I don't want to say it wasn't confirmed, but you hear stories of war crimes and sometimes I just want more information. Thank you, Marcy. I saw a number of the folks in the Western media, I think it was the Telegraph maybe, reported on the story. And if they're going to report on it, then I'll report on it. Put it that way. The Ukrainian soldier was allegedly beheaded by Russian forces in Donetsk Oblast, which is eastern Ukraine that's occupied. The soldier has been identified. Ukrainian prosecutor general said the discovery of the soldier's body on June 18th. What was this? After the discovery of the body on June 18th, his office has received information that Russian commanders had given orders not to capture Ukrainian servicemen, but instead to kill them by beheading. I mean, His post he posted about it was accompanied by a blurred picture showing a military vehicle with a severed head on the roof. Again, gross stuff, but you know what? Important to call them out on this stuff. Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Chef, for the gifts. Oh, this was hilarious. So Midas Touch reported on this morning, the Midas boys, that a Russian bot, the Russians are basically using ChatGPT to run their bots. Now, they're doing this on Twitter. They got caught. I would not be surprised if some of the folks we see on TikTok are the same, because frankly, why would you only do this on Twitter, right? Let me tell you what they're doing. And again, you take a guess whether the crazies that we see on TikTok all day long, including during this show, aren't Russian bots with ChatGPT. Listen to this. So Midas Touch, Midas Touch reported on it. I don't know that they discovered it. They're good guys, by the way. They're friends. Somebody on Twitter realizes that a verified account that has been defending Donald Trump, okay? Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate that. That has been defending Donald Trump. So there's a Twitter account that is promoting Donald Trump's candidacy for president and defending him left and right. All of a sudden, the other day, the Twitter account spews computer code in Russian. And it's literally like computer error code in Russian. And people got it translated, and they realized, thank you, Annie. You saw my note, Annie, by the way. Annie was very generous and got my dog a little military vest harness, but it's too big. Anyway, it's like ridiculously too big, actually. I got the extra small, which is her size, but thank you. That was very sweet of you. I sent you a note privately on Discord. So get this. This Twitter bot pretending to be a verified Twitter account is exposed as actually being a Russian bot using ChatGPT to interact with people online. And think about it. It's actually very scary, guys, because think about it. If anybody's used ChatGPT is basically a very scary human-like computer is the only way I can call it. It gives very detailed, very good human-like answers to complicated questions. I used it once. I gave it like my resume, I think, and said, write 2 paragraphs about who I am using these facts about me. It wrote a beautiful 2 paragraphs. I think I used it on LinkedIn maybe. We had some relatives, extended family member who died. And thank you, Tyler, and the kids of the woman wrote the obituary, and it was a really bad obituary. I mean, it just, some people, I'm a good writer. Thank you, Bryce. Some people can't write. They took the bad obituary, because just not written well, took the bad obituary, typed it into basically copied and pasted it into ChatGPT and said, rewrite this obituary and make it sound better or more professional. It was this beautiful obituary that came out. Thank you, Christine. I laughed because my mom turned to me in church. I knew this. No one was saying where the obituary came from because they thought people may not like it. My mom turned to me in church. She goes, you need to write something like that for my funeral. And I told her, I said, it was a computer. This stuff is super sophisticated. And the point is, it gets online and it says things, and then whatever you respond, it's able to read your response. And I don't want to say understand it, because I don't want to say that the computer is sentient, right? That it actually has a mind of its own. But the way it responds, it is as if is a human being who understood what you said, and it uses logic and information to argue back. That's what the Russians are doing on Twitter. Could they be doing it on TikTok? Could they be doing it on YouTube and elsewhere? Facebook, where we get trolls? Why wouldn't they? How scary is that, though? That not only, it's bad enough that we have like Russian trolls, like people who are paid by them to come and cause trouble, but to think that they're actually just paying, by the way, and paying a lot of money to ChatGPT, by the way. The Russians are doing this because they're paying a lot of money to get this service with ChatGPT. You can't just have ChatGPT do this without paying money. So ChatGPT probably knows exactly where this money is coming from, or they should know where this money is coming from. This is dangerous as hell. Absolutely dangerous as hell. Again, I think the computer stuff is cool. I think ChatGPT is cool, but this kind of stuff should not be allowed. It should be illegal, and the company should be forced to fix it. But again, keep an eye on what happens on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. When you see the trolls, as I've always said, most of the people who are arguing with you are not real. They're paid. And now we know many of them aren't even paid. Many of them are literally fake, are literally just fake. We're arguing with a computer that is smart enough to look at our argument and argue back. It's really scary stuff. It shouldn't be allowed at all. No. Anyway, yeah, I saw about the recipes. Gunther saying you can come up with recipes too. I have seen some recipes it proposed to people, which is interesting, you know? And of course, and the Russians paid for a verified account on Twitter as well, which Rob Wall notes, which they shouldn't be allowed to do. But of course, Elon Musk doesn't care. Elon Musk let literal Nazis come back on Twitter. Literal Nazis, the guy invited on Twitter. So, you know, you think he cares about the Russians using it to destroy democracy? Please, right? In any case, I just thought that was a very interesting story and scary. A little bit more. The Telegraph reports that Mark Warner, who is a Democratic United States Senator, he's the chairman of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, basically the most important intelligence community in Congress, or committee in Congress. They get regularly briefed by the CIA and other U.S. intelligence agencies on what's going on around the world. He said today that he expects to see Moscow's meddling ramp up dramatically ahead of the UK elections on July 4th. As you know, the Brits are voting on a new prime minister and a new parliament on July 4th. So just in, 3 weeks from now? Warner said the Kremlin and its surrogates were intent on sowing discontent or trying to pit groups against each other to further social division. He said that the U.S. has seen egregious efforts similar to what happened in 2016 when the Russians attacked our elections in a really big way for Donald Trump, or on behalf of Donald Trump. Anyway, just putting that out there. A Russian court in Vladivostok have sentenced U.S. military staff sergeant Gordon Black to 3 years and 9 months in a Russian penal colony on charges of theft and uttering death threats. This is that weird story about the American servicemen working stationed in South Korea. Like an idiot, he starts dating a Russian woman, which is insane. If you are a member of the U.S. military, you do not date a Russian woman. There is a very good chance that any Russian woman hitting on you, if you're in the U.S. military, is a spy. It's called a honey pot. I kept calling it a honey trap. It's a honey pot. The idea is it's honey, it's sticky, and you put your hand in and it gets stuck. Well, or your head, I guess. It may actually be based on Winnie the Pooh. Remember the one thing with Winnie the Pooh when he puts his head in the honey jar and then can't get out? Honey trap or honey pot? I always forget. Is it honey trap? Is it honey trap residual? I always say it wrong. It kind of makes me wonder, though, like to some degree, if it's the Winnie the Pooh thing, because he got his head in and couldn't get his head out, right? Hand or head. Well, in this case, it would be, Winnie the Pooh did it with his head. See, I was trying to remember honey pot, honey trap. Okay, I'm seeing you guys say both. Whichever. The idea of a honey pot or honey trap is that you use sex to lure somebody in and trick them, in essence. This guy, U.S. soldier in South Korea, meets a Russian woman, falls in love with her. Again, idiot. She breaks up with him. She goes back to Russia. He crosses the Russian border without, telling the U.S. military. And what do you know? He gets arrested and supposedly threatened the woman in this kind of crap. Guys, I have a hard time believing this woman isn't KGB agent, right? The FSB, the follow-on to the KGB. Very hard time believing she just is some innocent girl Russian girl who just happened to fall for a U.S. soldier in South Korea, mind you. What the hell is she doing in South Korea? Everything about this story screams spy. Thank you, Jeremy. So she claims, he tried to hit me or he threatened me and this guy, he stole money and he threatened me or some bullshit. I don't believe it, actually. I think it's a setup. He's another hostage now. He's an idiot, certainly. The guy's a full-blown idiot. U.S. military, any military, NATO military members know, A, not to date Russian girls, and B, not to sneak into Russia, to follow your girlfriend. That's idiotic, right? Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Patty. Anybody knows that. Oops, let me get here. Jeremy as well for the gifts. Thank you, guys. Keep them coming. But I think the Russians were glad to grab him. The Russians, they've got another hostage. This is what Russia does. They grab American hostages and they use the whole thing for, they use the whole thing to basically get their spies released abroad, or even worse, they had a big arms trafficker that was released in return for Brittany Griner, who is the American female basketball star that the Russians basically kidnapped, and we're going to keep in prison forever until we had to give up a guy who was the Merchant of Death, was his nickname. He supplied weapons around the world to bad guys, including to, I believe, ISIS or Al Qaeda in the Middle East. I mean, horrific guy. We had to give him up in exchange for Brittany Griner, which is too bad. All right, that is it for the news today. This is the part of the show where we hang out. I will show you one more time since we got more people now. We've got a very cool new auction item. Our auctions ended last night. We do auctions on behalf of for Ukraine. Half of the money goes to Ukraine, charities, military, etc. support. Half of it goes to support me because I do this full time. That's why I'm always asking you guys for the gifts and stuff, because quite literally this is my job. So your gifts and stuff help pay the bills. But the first auction item we've got up, the auctions will end in about a week, that we've got is a Lego knockoff. It's not a Lego. It's a Lego knockoff that James, one of our wonderful viewers, got in Ukraine recently when he was volunteering. And it is a Bayraktar, which are the Turkish drones that the Ukrainians used so effectively to take out the Russian troops. Very cool. Again, it's a Lego, but it's not a Lego. It's a knockoff. Well, so I'm looking at the box and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. It says ZSU at the top, which is the acronym for Armed Forces of Ukraine. It's got, actually, this is very cool. This was actually rather brilliant, the design. It's got the Ukrainian trident, but when you look closely at it, it says, well, ZCY, we would think in English. It's like ZSU, made to look like the trident. ZSU is the abbreviation, again, for the Armed Forces of Ukraine, made to look like a trident. How's that for cool? My favorite part of, and of course, it's got the Ukrainian flag and the country. The best part of this, so this fake Lego honoring a Turkish weapon that has successfully killed lots of Russian troops, okay? Where do you think it's made? Okay, it's not made in Russia. That would be the funniest. What would be the second funniest for where this thing was made? Okay, it's made in China. They literally, the Chinese, which is Russia's top ally in the war. I mean, the top ally, them and the North Koreans, right? Siding with the Russians, probably giving them weapons. We don't know for sure. But Russia's really most important ally in the war against Ukraine. The Chinese are making toys honoring, commemorating weapons of war that are famous for killing Russian troops. I mean, with the Ukrainian flag, Ukraine. I mean, this cracked me up so much when I read this. I'm like, only China would do this. Thank you, Chris. I mean, only China would do. I mean, it's funny because they make fun of us for being capitalist. This is capitalism, you know. And for the government to let them do it, it's like, it's like, oh, well. Anyway, you can find this over at our auctions. The mods can tell you where they are. I'm putting this one up in the VIP auction. We've got like a public auction for everybody and a VIP one for the monthly subscribers because TikTok is still broken after 2 years. You cannot access the VIP auction from with your TikTok subscription, sadly, because TikTok's broken. They refuse to fix it. I don't know why. But if you are a monthly subscriber on YouTube, Discord, Ko-fi, you can access this. I apologize again, Discord, TikTok guys, but you know, I don't know what TikTok's problem is. They tried a year ago and couldn't do it. And it was like, really? It just doesn't work. But anyway, you can find Discord over in our on TikTok in my profile. Click the Linktree link. And the very first thing that comes up is Discord. Click it. For you guys, go to just the description of the show. And I now have the Discord link in the description of my show on YouTube. So just go there, click it. And again, once you get there, sign off on all the little, if you haven't been to Discord before, I'm not a troll, verify, blah, blah, blah. And we're good. But yeah, sorry about that. It pisses me off because it makes it very confusing and frankly annoying to have to tell people that you bought a monthly subscription, but TikTok won't let you use it. It's just like, thank you, Macabre. Even worse, it works for some people. I was talking to some folks the other day. Some people with other Discord forums, the link works with TikTok, but mine doesn't. I'm like, which also is kind of frankly suspicious too, right? right? The link to the Ukraine Discord doesn't work. The link to other Discords works from TikTok. Sure. Thank you, Macabre. Thank you for peace. Thank you, Timothy. All right, guys. So let's talk. She's a honeypot. Oh, there you go. That's funny. By the way, Gunther just checked on Google. Google says honey trapping, also known as honeypot. So it is both. Okay. Yeah, Jennifer, not sure. Sometimes the phone, like if you use an Android, it can be weird sometimes. I don't know. All this technology, right? Anyway, all right, guys. Yes, it will not, Courtney. It will not give you VIP on Discord. That's the problem. TikTok is broken. TikTok is broken in sending the credentials for subscribers over to Discord. So you can connect your Discord. You can connect your TikTok account, but it will not recognize your subscription for whatever crazy freaking reason. So it's very annoying. I had a good conversation today. Yes, thank you, Roy, for the gift. Yulia and I, who's a Ukrainian political commentator, did an interview for, I guess it's a video podcast, a vlog or whatever you call it, that she's got that I'm guessing she's doing on YouTube, maybe. We'll have to see, but it was a recording we did for a little over an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes, actually, talking about Russia and the Soviet Union and all of that. And she's going to be publishing it in the next week. So it's not going up yet. It'll be published in the next week. And I'm guessing it will be on YouTube. She'll let us know once it's published. I'll let you guys know. But it was a very interesting conversation. Again, she and I are very much in agreement on all this stuff when it comes to Russia, but very interesting. The trolls will hate it. And we're talking about history a lot, the history of Russia, Soviet Union. I mentioned your comment, Slovak, by the way, or I call you Slovak. Solak. What the hell's your name? Whatever your name is, Solak, I think, right? I told her your comment about how basically they were always Russians, which I thought was very interesting. Thank you, Linka, Papichulo, Chris Talk, all for the gifts there. Anyway, so probably next week, I think. Yeah, it'll be out. James asks, thank you, Roy, for the gift. James says, do you think Russia can try to take Kyiv again or any other big cities? And thank you, Roy, for the gift as well. Currently, no. Currently, Russia doesn't have the ability to do that. Even this battle in the northeast near Kharkiv, right? They threw all the troops they had at it. They got a couple towns. Now, they recently got a town that potentially causes problems for Ukraine because it does put Ukraine close to, or puts the Russians close to taking a transport hub, like a transport pathway on your roads that Ukraine needs to supply its troops. So, Russia's making some advances, but Russia currently doesn't have really the troops or the weapons to make a big push at a Ukrainian city, which is good. Next year, could that change? Who knows, right? Thank you, Roy, for the gifts. It depends in part on American aid, European aid. I mean, right? It's probably to some degree too on how the Russian economy is doing. But right now, there's no concern, but no one thinks the Russians are going to be able to make any big push this year, really. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Roy, for the multiple gifts on TikTok. Just looking here, what else? Well, the North Korea, Eve asks another question about North Korea, which is interesting because Putin was just in North Korea today, signed a defense pact with the North Koreans. North Korea is crazy. They're a communist dictatorship. They are literally the most brutal dictatorship in the entire world. I think it's a fair thing to say. I do. I think, Myanmar is pretty bad, but I think the North Koreans are worse. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Elizabeth. Part of the problem isn't just that the North Korean regime has killed millions of its own people, starved them to death, everything else. Horrific communist dictatorship. But part of the problem is they're crazy. The Korean, I always say this about Russia. The Russians aren't crazy, right? Putin is immoral, amoral, willing to saddle up to North Korean dictators, the Chinese, anybody, right? Committing genocide in Ukraine. He doesn't care. He's immoral, but he's not crazy, right? He knows what he's doing, and he's doing it. I think he's trying to be very smart about it, which is why I don't think we're going to war anytime soon with Putin. He's smart enough to know he'd lose a war with the West if he did it, right? Um, yep, you're all right. Relax, you. The dog is begging for treats again. Jeez, like clockwork. It's like 10 to 7. She either wants water or treats. Um, the North Korean, different story. They're nuts. The North Korean government is categorically nuts. I mean, they're crazy. They would be, and they've got nuclear weapons. They're kind of like the nightmare of Iran having nuclear weapons, but I'd say Iran is evil. Like Iran would love to nuke Israel, but Iran isn't crazy either, I don't think, but I think they're kind of evil. The North Koreans are crazy. I mean, they just literally, you got to study the government, study the history. They're nuts. They could do anything, and they've got nukes, which always makes them a risk. So the concern is that with Russia getting closer to North Korea, with signing a defense pact, would the Russians bring the North Koreans in? Would they bring Korean troops to fight in Ukraine? If they did, how would that affect the war effort? Also, I think the bigger problem, which I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if the Russians were to bring North Korean troops basically into Europe, right? Because Ukraine's Europe, to fight, thank you, Doug, for the gift, to fight in Ukraine, I think you've got a real issue with the Europeans having to send troops potentially. We cannot accept the North Koreans sending their troops halfway around the world. Basically, I mean, it's 12 time zones, basically 11, 12 time zones, sending their troops, maybe not halfway around the world, but a third of the way around the world to fight in a European war. I don't know how we accept that. At the very least, I think it would mean a massive influx of weapons meaning weapons from the West that we aren't allowing. I don't know what that means. I don't know whether there's much more we can give them, but I think we would be forced to give more weapons. I think potentially the French might just move in troops. It gets very scary if Russia does that. It's very scary. Yeah. No, it was a good. I don't remember what Yulia said. I'm sure Yulia agreed with me because Yulia has always said, sorry, Solak was talking about the Russia. She's always said that, the Soviet, they've never stopped being the Soviets. And I mentioned your point and he said they never stopped being Russians, which I thought was a good observation. Thank you, user 336. It's funny. I'm recognizing your crazy name. I actually recognize it now, user 336. It makes me think of species 8472, which anybody who gets that wins the award today. I know some of you get that. Gunther probably does. Anyway, so what else we got, guys? Exactly. That was Star Trek Voyager. Exactly. Not Next Generation. That was Voyager. Great little subplot, actually. And that was a really good one. Well, Joshua says what the Soviets didn't invent the KGB. I mean, they did, though. What do you mean? I mean, they had, what was the one called before? What were they called? What was it called? The secret police before the KGB. I'm forgetting. I'm going to give my dog a little water. Somebody, shoot, I know the name. It's not like Cossack. It's some name. NKVD, but wasn't there like a name? No, not the FSB. NKVD. Maybe it's NKVD. I was thinking it was an actual word that I was remembering. One second, get the dog a little water. Oh. All right. One moment. Here, a little more. There you go. All right. Okay, NKVD. Yeah, I remember there being some kind of Cheka is what I'm thinking Cheka. I'm thinking Cheka. What was Cheka versus the NKVD? Cheka is what I'm thinking. That was the word I was thinking. Yeah. But what was Cheka? If so, only because I could Google right. I guess I could Google right now. Smetched, I don't remember. NKVD, I vaguely remember. And Cheka, I definitely remember. You are a lame CIA plant? I'm actually a very effective CIA plant. I'm not a lame CIA plant. Please. Girl. Girl. Lame. I don't think so. 1917-ish. Okay. I just remember it being like the precursor. Yeah. Okay, that's what it is then. All right. Okay. Cheka. I knew you'd get him. Don't worry. You are a lame CIA plant. First of all, again, he could be ChatGPT. Thank you, Mikey, for the gift there. Oops. What was that one? Emergency Committee of Czechia. Is that what they were called? Urazvichajnych Komitet. That's easy. Oh, I see. Czechia. Czechia. Oh, so Czechia stood for something else. I do not work for the U.S. government. If I worked for the U.S. government, I wouldn't be allowed to do this. Gee, I wouldn't mind working for the U.S. government because I don't make nearly enough money doing this. My whole life has been not making a lot of money because I've wanted to devote myself to causes I care about, and the latest cause has been Ukraine. I mean, I do okay, but I don't make a lot of money doing this, which is why I always hit you guys up for the gifts, which I will again right now to pay the bills. But no, U.S. government by law probably can't pay me. Americans, sadly, not sadly, I joke when I say sadly, the American government actually, for all of its problems, is pretty good about trying to do things legally. At least good U.S. governments are. And I've actually done work before for the State Department, for example. I was once helping the State Department after 9/11, September 11th, right? The big attack in America. I was working with the State Department, helping them use the internet to put out a friendly message about America after 9/11, to basically a message to get the world to sympathize with what happened to us, literally like a couple months after 9/11, to sympathize and to support us, but also to present like a positive message. America is back, America's strong, right? Help them develop a website. Very, very interesting story. I mean, this beautiful website we developed, and I went and interviewed all these survivors. We did a story about the heroes, all sorts of stuff. And at the time, it was illegal. Back then, you had to submit websites to Google, for example. This is like 2001, right? 2002. Thank you, Doug. You had to submit your new website to Google. I was not allowed to submit the website to Google or Yahoo, which was another place you had to submit it, because they were American companies. And by law, the State Department is not allowed to promote propaganda directed at Americans. So it was considered simply submitting our damn website to Google and Yahoo. And Yahoo back then was huge. Like the world would go to Google and Yahoo and Alta Vista, the big three, to find out what was going on in the news, America, et cetera, everywhere. We were not allowed to even submit our project, our website to those, because under US law, that would be considered proselytizing or propagandizing Americans. So they would never pay me to do this. I wish they would, but they never would. I don't know Scott Sandman. No, Valerie, I don't know. But no one's paying. No, I wish, again, guys, if an NGO or if anybody were paying me to do this, contact me. I'll accept it. I am happy. If you want to pay me to help Ukraine, I'm there. I'm not going to hide. I would love it. I would freaking love it. And I would tell you, because I don't care, right? I'm supporting Ukraine. If I were getting paid, I wouldn't have to keep asking you for gifts. I'd love it. And if anybody knows anybody who wants to pay to help me do this, I'm here. So go for it. But exactly. Currently, you pay me. You pay me. So with the gifts. So why do we support Ukraine? We support Ukraine for a couple of reasons. One, generally speaking, it's kind of considered a good thing for human beings to support other human beings in need, right? We don't like countries that are getting wiped out. That's the first reason. And by the way, innocent countries getting wiped out. Ukraine did nothing wrong. The Russians simply want to take Ukraine because they want it. They want to take the country. They want to make it part of Russia. The Russians don't like the fact that their empire fell apart when the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. They lost Ukraine. They lost Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. All of these countries that Russia was holding hostage as part of the Soviet Union, but also as part of Eastern Europe. Russia also had a number of hostage countries in Eastern Europe that they installed communist dictatorships in. Thank you, Johnny D. And thank you, Dublin. They had communist dictators in, and they literally sent tanks in to kill students in Czechoslovakia and in Hungary. Back then, Czechoslovakia was one country. Czech, Slovak is now two countries. Thank you, Johnny D, for the gift, by the way. And they sent tanks in to kill students who were simply protesting for democracy. Horrific. Now, what were we saying? Why? So that's the first thing. Generally speaking, I think it's probably a good thing for countries around the world to try to help innocent people getting slaughtered. Generally speaking, it's a good thing. Second of all, we don't want World War III in Europe, and I think we may get World War III in Europe if Russia's allowed to win. Russia, unfortunately, is the Soviet Union again. Yulia and I were talking about this, and we were saying Solak kind of mentioned, well, they're not the Soviet Union again. They're still Russians, right? Russians have a history of very bad foreign policy and very bad dictatorial governments. They do. Certainly the Soviet Union, horrific. Before then was all the czars and everything who were basically dictators. And now, forget it. Same thing under Putin, dictator, right? Different kind of dictator than the Soviets, but same kind of thing. And Putin himself was a Soviet as well, right? Thank you, Bjorn. Bjorn gifted 5 gift memberships. Thank you, Bjorn. Good. So who got it? Terry, Mike, Christian, Manda. Oh, Manda, you got one. Cute. And James. Excellent. Oh, that was sweet. Thank you, Bjorn. So there is real concern now that Russia is back to being a really horrible hegemonic dictator that wants to take over its neighbors and frankly might want to start World War III because they crazily think they can win it. If Russia takes Ukraine, Russia, the fear is, and I think it's a justified fear, is that Russia will try to take part of Poland. It will try to take part of Lithuania. It may go after Estonia, Latvia. Guess what? All those countries, thank you, Christine. Thank you, T. Winters as well. All those countries are NATO members. If Russia goes after them, it is World War III. NATO will declare war on Russia. Now, even if Donald Trump is president and says, no, let Russia invade NATO, I'm not going to come and help you. Guess who is going to help? The Finns are going to help. The Brits are going to help, right? The Germans are going to help. The French are going to help. The Swedes, Norway, Poland, the Baltic countries. You are going to have, 10 European countries declare war on Russia, and they will be major U.S. allies, even if the U.S. doesn't do it. And we will not have a choice but to get involved because we will literally have World War III in Europe. And America cannot sit back if all of our allies are getting blown up by the Russians, because guess what? Not only are most of us from there, at least so far, our population's changing, right? We're getting much more Latin American, but a lot of us tie our roots to Europe. So we wouldn't want to sit back and watch our, the places we're from get blown up. That matters to Americans a lot. A lot of us, like I'm Greek, a lot of us are very strongly attached to our ethnicities in America still, where our family came from. But also trade and economics. We can't afford to have the Russians destroy Europe. That is why we support Ukraine, because quite literally, we believe in stopping World War III. So. Well, here, see, the thing is, Tiger Lord, I know you're just being a troll, by the way, and you're leaving. Tiger Lord says you should move to Ukraine. The funny thing is, I don't need to move to Ukraine because the Ukrainians are killing the Russian troops for the West. They are literally destroying the Russian military. They have decimated the Russian military. 500,000 Russian soldier casualties. 500,000 gone because of what the Ukrainians have done to them with our weapons and our aid. I don't know how much money we would have to pay if we wanted to take on the Russians directly and destroy their military. The amount of money we would have to spend, the amount of lives we would have to lose by doing this. Russia is our enemy. And our enemy has been destroyed by the Ukrainians, and all we had to do was give them a little bit of money. By the way, the money we've given them is equal to 15% of our defense budget, maybe. 15% of 1 year of our defense budget is all we had to spend to destroy our enemy's military. That is golden. That is absolutely golden. So that's a whole other reason to support Ukraine, which is they destroyed our enemy for us. And we didn't have to spend. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, to be honest, in the sense that, thank you, Johnny D, for the Aflac. It's a horrible thing to say in the sense that we should have great respect for what the Ukrainians are doing, because they're putting their lives on the line to help defend us, in essence, to help stop a war in Europe and to basically emasculate our enemy, which Russia is our enemy. So yeah. So big deal. Big deal, Moose and Squirrel. Putin wants the Soviet Union back. He absolutely does, Reed. Yeah, he does. I mean, Putin's a Soviet. Putin was a communist. Putin was literally a member of the KGB. You don't grow up. Think about it this way. You're a CIA officer for 20 years, right? You leave the CIA and America turns into some other kind of country. But you're a CIA officer. It doesn't matter if they change the name of the CIA to FSB, right? You're still CIA. That's your training. That's how you think. That's who you are. And that's the problem, is the people running Russia today are the communists. They're the KGB. They're the Russian military. They're the Soviet military, I should say. They're Soviets. They're the same people. They simply changed the name of their government, or changed the name on some of the buildings. They're the same people, So, and the oligarchs, sure, the oligarchs. And some of the oligarchs are younger. Well, the oligarchs are basically mafia. So you've got like communists and mafia running Russia at this point. It's horrible. It's just horrible. What else? Thank you, Janice. Appreciate the gift. Mike, I don't understand your question. You need more verbs in there. What do you think West PHC? Unless you're asking about the Philippines, I'm not sure what you're asking about there. Biden doesn't have any dirty dealings. I kind of wish he did. Biden's too much of a Boy Scout. I'm only mentioning it because the trolls are bringing this up. The House Republicans have been unable to even start impeachment hearings on Joe Biden because they can't find any evidence, and they've admitted it. Remember what happened to the Republicans. It's kind of sad for the Republicans, but they concocted this whole story that Biden and his son were corruptly working with the Ukrainian government and getting money to help the Ukrainians and this kind of crazy stuff. And their lead witness was just arrested by the FBI for concocting the entire story. He made the entire thing up, and the FBI arrested him. And their whole case went out the window. So, Joe Biden, bottom line is Joe Biden's old. I mean, first of all, the trolls don't like him because they're Russian. I mean, that's the first thing. Republicans don't like him because they want Trump to win because they're Republicans. But overall, the only thing you can say about Biden that's bad is he's old, and he is old. But, guess what? He's better than a felon, convicted felon. He's better than somebody who loves America's enemies. He's better than someone who hates America's troops. Trump has literally called Americans. You guys know this. Trump called American prisoners of war and killed in action from World War II, World War I, other wars, called them suckers and losers for getting caught and killed. Trump's own chief of staff in the White House, a former American general, was the one who finally went public. And he went public and then he wrote a book about it. And he talked about it in the book. I mean, so yeah, let's talk about that compared to Joe Biden being old. Yeah. With, by the way, the greatest economy we've had in 50 years right now. The economy, unemployment is at a practically lowest ever. Inflation, lowest practically ever. New jobs are growing at twice to three. The last job report, they were supposed to grow a certain amount, is what the economics say. It grew 3 times that amount. It was supposed to grow by whatever amount. It was 100,000 jobs or 150. It grew like 300 or 450, whatever it is, 3 times. So yeah, Biden's old. That's it. But calling Biden corrupt is just a joke. Our borders, well, here's the problem with our borders, Alexis. I'm glad you brought it up. We've got a lot of illegal people crossing our border because of Donald Trump. The Republicans came up with a deal back in end of January. And frankly, the Democrats caved. I mean, the Democrats, I think, were freaking out about the election. And the Democrats, and I've criticized Democrats on this before, the Democrats are way too lax on immigration. They are. Right? They want Latino votes, this kind of stuff. And, most of the people crossing our border illegally are Latinos. So Biden didn't want to do a lot about it. But in January, Democrats finally said, okay, we will agree with the Republicans. And the Democrats accepted. Google this. By the way, it is all over the news. I just recently did a TikTok on this and brought up the articles. Google it. The Democrats finally accepted the conservative Republican proposal about our border with Mexico. It was a conservative proposal. It was concocted by Senator James Langford, who is a super conservative Republican from Oklahoma. I mean, this guy is conservative. There is nothing about this guy that even vaguely is to the left of even the Republican Party. He's right wing. He came up with the idea. He was the lead negotiator for the Republicans. The Democrats accepted his proposal. The Democrats dropped amnesty, which Democrats put in every proposal. Amnesty for people who are here, they dropped it. This proposal was only to cut off people coming into the country illegally. The Republicans accepted it because it was their proposal. By the way, Google this if you don't believe me. Google it, right? The Republicans accepted the proposal because it was their proposal. What did Donald Trump do? Trump said, we can't have this proposal because I'm running on immigration for the presidency. We cannot have the immigration problem solved by this proposal, because how do I attack Joe Biden for illegals crossing the border if illegals are not crossing the border? Trump had the proposal killed. Google it. Republican senators, multiple Republican senators went public and actually criticized Trump, which they never do, and said, our own people killed this bill when they did it because of the election. So that's what happened. Today, we have illegals crossing the border this year because of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump cares more about Donald Trump than he does America. And Trump thought it was in his interest to let millions of people cross our border illegally this year because it would help him say we have a problem when he runs for president. That is sick. That is absolutely sick. And again, Google it. Google it. I mean, that's the thing that gets me. These kind of stories, anytime you get the trolls or anybody else saying, oh, it's a lie, Google it, and you will see it all over the place. You could blame Joe Biden before this year, but this year, it's Donald Trump. Oh, and by the way, final story. What did Biden do? What did Biden do? Biden actually implemented the Republican proposal anyway. He implemented it anyway, but he made it twice as strong. The Republican proposal had all sorts of limits, like if 5,000 people cross the border illegally over a certain period of time, we'll shut the border down. Biden changed it. This is the Republican proposal. Biden changed it to 2,500 people. So instead of 5,000 people coming illegally in a day, triggering the draconian response, now it's 2,500 people crossing the border illegally triggers a draconian response where we shut the border. Biden actually made it more conservative than the Republicans agreed to. So, yeah. And if that bothers you, feel free to walk, because as I've said, this is not a cult. This show is about the truth. I will criticize Biden, and I criticize Biden left and right on Ukraine when he deserves it. And he does deserve it, because this war would have been over by now, I think, if Biden hadn't gotten cold feet at the beginning and been so afraid of Putin. But I'm not going to sit here and let Donald Trump destroy my country and you guys lie about it and pretend like, oh, yeah, you're right. There's both sides to Donald Trump lying. Donald Trump's a freaking felon. I mean, I'm sorry, but at this point, you believe in faith and freedom. You shouldn't be supporting a guy who stooped a porn star. Went right after his daughter was born, he slept with a porn star. Didn't just cheat on his wife right after, not daughter, his son Barron. Didn't just cheat on his wife right after she gave birth. He did it with a porn star. I mean, I'm sorry. And I don't mean to be judgmental, but I do. I'm more conservative on stuff like this. It's disgusting. You cheated on your spouse, but you did it with a porn star? Like, could you be any more gross about it? I mean, I guess, I wasn't going to say somebody who sells themselves would be more gross, I suppose, but just barely, absolutely sickening. And it's sickening. Anyway, Ash, like I said, feel free, just knock them out if needed. Just knock them out. Anyway, thank you, Elizabeth. All right, what else we got, guys? We could do a little more 7-Eleven. We'll do a little more Ukraine. What else? Beep, beep, beep. Is that? Oh, Flower Lady. Thank you, Flower Lady, for the dino. The Russian troops are making prisoners of war. In what sense, Tycho? I mean, the Russians are taking Ukrainian prisoners. The Ukrainians are taking Russian prisoners. They are having prisoner exchanges. They hadn't for a while. They recently had a prisoner exchange, and the sick part was the Ukrainians who were being held by the Russians came back looking like Holocaust survivors. I mean, skin and bones, disgusting, nothing. I mean, they look like they lost 40, 50 pounds. Absolutely disgusting. And it's a total war crime. The Russians that stayed with the Ukrainians looked fine because they were fed normally, and the Ukrainians don't do. Ukraine's a civilized country. If you're not a civilized country, you abuse prisoners of war. I mean, literally, it's not done. You don't abuse prisoners of war. It's illegal, let alone just being awful, And yes, Rich, I do like my, I see we've got a Serb here too. Goodbye, Serb. I do like my red shirts, not for Star Trek, of course, but Red has always looked good on me. So when I do the video shows, I like to wear red if I can, because it's always a good color for me. These are the things you have to like actually, thank you, Tom, that you actually have to think about when you do shows. I always tell people you got to think about lighting. You got to think about the color of your clothing. Also the way you sit. Like I've done a lot of American television, national TV, and I sit in a special way when I'm talking to you. You sit towards the front of your chair and you sit up. Like, oh, this is not the way I would normally sit necessarily, but you sit straight up and you sit at the front of your chair. If you sit back in your chair, right? Now, first of all, it's too low, but even not being low, look at my shoulders, right? Because you kind of lean forward, right? But if you sit up straight, it looks better. The other thing is, I will tell you just the media training tips here. Thank you, Massimo. You're supposed to put your palms of your hands on your lap, like close to your body right here. So basically like here, you put them. Look what happens if I put my hands between my knees. A lot of people get nervous and they close their arms together, right? Look what happens if I put my hands between my knees. You do this. Now on YouTube, you can really see the difference, okay? It makes it rounder and it makes my shoulders go forward, and I look a little bit like I'm crouching and being like insecure, inferior, versus this where you're much more proud. It matters for anyway. I'm giving you TV tips, but it's all sorts of little. So that's why the red. Yeah, I like the red. The red looks good on me. And you just try to sort of do colors and things that work, because this is TV, so to speak. It's video, you know? Do I see world war in the near future? No. I don't think you need to take any actions to prepare. There's no action needed to do. You put your hands on the on your pockets, in essence, right? But the front, not the sides necessarily, but on your pockets, right? So like right here, I will try to show you, like right here, facing forward is where you put your hands when you're talking. What people will do when they get nervous is they put their hands between their knees and the shoulders come together, and it makes me bend a little bit. And now my shoulders, it looks, I don't know if, again, on TikTok, I don't know if you can see it. I'll show you. I don't know if you can see it well enough. If I do this versus the way I should sit, it's just a little more proud and looks a little more confident than doing this. This is diminutive. I look like almost like I'm doing this, right? Anyway, it's a whole, yeah, Damon, no problem. It's I mean, I had a lot of media training. It was very nice though. It opens you up. It makes you look. But the funny part is, quite literally, I'm at the front of my chair, sitting straight up in a way that if you saw me in person, you'd go, that's just uncomfortable. You know, it looks too anal. But you'll notice, like on CNN and other networks, if they ever pull out a little bit, the people who have had media training will be sitting on the front of their chair. And again, they're like this at the front of their chair. They're being very straight up and proper, and it looks good. But again, I don't do, if I'm working, I'm like this, I'm slouched over. But any case, what else we got? Yeah, Keps, I mentioned during the show, actually, the claim that the Russians apparently decapitated a Ukrainian soldier and like put the head on their car. It was really disgusting, really disgusting. Elite lifts. I did talk earlier about the North Korea-Russia talks. It's concerning. I mean, North Korea is a horrible place. It is the most brutal dictatorship on the planet. It's a communist dictatorship. He's killed millions of his own people. The guy running the country is literally crazy. They have nuclear weapons. If they didn't have nuclear weapons, honestly, we'd wipe them out probably. Horrific country. There's always the danger of them using their nukes because they're crazy. And Putin is sucking up to them left and right. The real concern, not just that the North Koreans are providing ammunition, artillery to the Russians, possibly as much as 5 million, artillery pieces or rounds, bullets, so to speak, to the Russians. But they could someday supply men to the Russians, which would be very bad, troops, but also what Russia's doing in return. The concern is that the Russians are going to give the North Koreans nuclear technology, whether it's nuclear reactors, nuclear weapons, whatever, and I believe it was missile technology, because they keep trying to do better for their ballistic missiles, their missiles they use to like attack, what they would use to nuke us, and their satellites. I believe they don't have very advanced satellites, and they want better satellites too, like spy satellites. And the Russians could help them in all of this. And frankly, Putin doesn't care. I mean, he's a dictator, and he wants to help the war. He's desperate to help the war effort. It's really scary, really scary. So yeah, I mean, well, if the war broke out, they would level Seoul, yeah, which is the capital of South Korea, which is, I think, is Seoul 20 miles? How close is Seoul to the border? Let me see. Alexa, how close is Seoul, Korea to the North Korean border?
Seoul is located in the northwest of South Korea on the Han River, only about 30 miles.
30 miles. 30 miles. So it's like 50 kilometers. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, either Ellie, thank you for subscribing, or thank you whoever gave Ellie the gift subscription. I don't know which one it is, but thank you either way. Timble, thank you for the rose. So yeah, North Korea is that close to South Korea, but not just that close to South Korea. They're 30 miles or 50 kilometers from the South Korean capital, which they would wipe out. So it's a big deal. Yeah. Thank you, Marge, for the gift. Cuevas as well, with a very nice gift. The U.S. doesn't attack first because North Korea has nuclear weapons, right? We would have to literally we would have to be guaranteed to take out all of their nukes, and not just their nukes. They're close enough to fire artillery and stuff at South Korea. So how do we take out enough weapons that the North Koreans aren't able to just destroy Seoul, right? And Seoul's got, Alexa, what's the population of Seoul, Korea? I'm going to go with 15 million, 10.
The population of Seoul is 9.61 million people.
9.6 million, so 10 million people. 10 million people. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, Reed. I mean, we'd have to literally destroy all of their nukes in a decapitating attack, and take out enough of their artillery and everything else so that they weren't able to just level Seoul, which is 9 million people. Actually, what's the population of South Korea overall? Sorry, guys, let me do one more, Alexa. Alexa, what's the population of South Korea? I'm going to go with 30.
The population of South Korea is
51 million. Okay, that's pretty good. 51 million. So 20% of the population, here Alexa answered, I'm sure it did. 20% of the population is in the capital, but that's a lot of people getting wiped out, and that's kind of scary. They would totally try to flatten Seoul. Yeah, Peter. So no, I mean, trust me, the world would be a better place if we were able to get rid of the North Korean government. How do you do it? It's kind of like Iran, frankly. Iran cannot be permitted to have nuclear weapons, but how do you get rid of them when they're buried in the mountains and everything else? And you would literally have to send, the estimates 20 years ago were sending 20, 30,000 plus American troops into Iran on the ground. I mean, it's just a very scary prospect, but some things have to be done with Iran. They can't be permitted to get a nuke, but God, very scary. Anyway. Oh, thank you, Flower Lady. That's the cool gift we got last night too. The kitty bops. It's funny. It's this like cool cats with glasses kind of going, yeah, baby. Cool. Thank you for that. It is a very nice gift. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Anyway, it would be very scary. Honestly, North Korea needs a revolution, but it is such a strict communist state that it's such a horrific communist dictatorship that I just have no idea if you ever could have people rising up. It's sad. It's very sad. It's so screwed up. Thank you, Paul, for the gifts. I don't think we're close to World War III. No. Because again, I lived during the Soviet years. That was one of the things Julie asked me today. I mean, we had the threat of nuclear war, half my life. We had to worry about nuclear war. I mean, with the Russians, with the Soviets, because that's what they would always threaten us. So this is no different than what they did back then. I mean, you have to worry about it, but I don't let it get to me. They're Sasha. No, they're an enemy. I mean, they're our enemy, and they're not very, not very good people as far as the government goes. What else? We'll go a little bit more. Sasha, stop, please. Come on. No, you can wait. Oh my God. She's drinking a lot, which means she's going to have to pee in the middle of the night. My dog, she's old. She drinks. She has a drinking problem. Quiet. Anyway, Iran could have nuclear weapons now too. It's possible. Yeah. Yeah. I did not, Marinel, but I don't even know what the Cartier scandal is. I don't even know what it is. Well, I mean, we were, Jennifer. I mean, Jennifer says I was telling my daughter we were worried about nuclear war in the 80s. We were. I mean, we were worried about nuclear war in the 70s, the 80s, in the 70s and 80s. Well, 60s too, probably, right? I mean, 60, not probably, 60s for sure. But that's because Russia was an evil dictatorship with nuclear weapons. And they're still an evil dictatorship with nuclear weapons. I mean, yeah, you got to worry about it. But, welcome to the world. By the way, too, we are not the first country in history or the first people in history to worry about having an evil enemy hell-bent on destroying us. Most of history, countries had to worry about evil enemies hell-bent on destroying them. This is not new, So that's why I don't worry about it. I mean, meaning I worry about it, but I don't worry about it because we had to worry about this before. And again, when it comes down to it, if Russia nukes us, we nuke them. Period. There's no stopping it. We would just, if they nuked us, we would wipe them off the planet. I hope that never happens. But you know who hopes it never happens even more than me? The Russians hope it never happens. Right? That's why. The Russians know that if they nuke us, we will literally destroy them. They don't want that to happen. So they're not going to do it. Iran could have nuclear weapons. I mean, that's been the talk, is that we think Iran does not, but we're not 100% sure, which is also very scary. Hello, you. Will their nukes work? The problem is, right, we don't know if Russia's nuclear weapons would work, but you have to assume they would is the problem, right? Because we're talking about nuclear weapons, you can't kind of say, well, I hope they don't work, so let's just go for it, right? And risk nuclear war because they probably don't work. All they need is one weapon to work, and they've taken out Chicago or taken out New York or whatever, right? It would be horrible, or Berlin or Paris or whatever. So, I agree with you. We would hope some of the Russian weapons don't work, but we have to presume that they do in terms of making our own planning, What else? Actually, it's 25 after. So I know we saw war games. It's 25 after. Nope, you can't blow them in the sky. You cannot blow them up in the sky. That was the whole idea behind the Star Wars initiative under Reagan, the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, which wasn't a bad idea, really, but I mean, destabilizing maybe, but not a bad idea, was trying to figure out how to blow up rockets in the air, and it wasn't successful. So no, once the rocket's in the air, good luck. Good luck. I say Chicago because I'm from Chicago. It just pops into my head. Yep. SDI. I know. I was going to say, David. I think that's something else. I'm pretty sure that's something else. Oh no, you're close. It would be ST something else. Yeah. STI. That's funny. The second you wrote it, I thought, God, maybe there is a different acronym I'm forgetting. Iron Dome, who knows? Yeah, I mean, the Israelis have come up with a system for shooting down like incoming missiles, that the Palestinians keep shooting at them, Israeli cities. So who knows whether that at some point, would work. Now, there's a whole school of thought too that those systems are destabilizing because what the argument is, what protects us from war with Russia or nuclear war is the Russians know that they can't stop our missiles, and we know that we can't stop their missiles, so that if we ever attack each other, the other side will attack back and will blow each other up, so that both sides know it's not worth it. The concern with Star Wars program under Reagan, the SDI, was that if we develop a system to stop Russian missiles from hitting us, the Russians may feel they need to attack us before the system comes into place, because they might think that basically our defensive system to take out all Russian missiles coming in is a system that would let us attack Russia first and not worry about it, because we could blow them up. And when they tried to blow us up back, we'd blow up all their weapons. So if you're Russia, potentially you say, okay, this is a system the Americans could use to literally blow us off the planet. We need to attack them before the system's in place. I mean, so that was the concern about these kind of weapon systems, is that potentially, even though you'd think it's a good thing to stop an attack like that, it's potentially very destabilizing because it can provoke the other party to go to war in advance. you know? Anyway, a glass dome. I didn't see that, Carrie. Put a glass dome around the U.S. like in The Simpsons. I did not see that, but that's very funny. We can always go back. We can always go back to the Simpsons. You know, develop it in secret. Yeah, you could try. You could try as long as the Russians didn't find out. The problem is you'd have to test it. You know, if you try to develop such a system in secret, at some point you've got to test it in the sky. And how do you do that without the Russians seeing you blow things up and go, wait a minute, we know what you're doing, you know? Who knows? Who knows? All right, guys, let me do a quick summary of the stories we covered today, and then I will call it quits because we've been going for about an hour and a half now. We'll be back. Hello, dog. I know, hear you, dog. We'll be going, be back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern time, US. So come back tomorrow, obviously, for our next show. But today is day 846 of Putin's special 3-day military operation. Putin signed a defensive pact with North Korea today. The French far-right leader, the sort of fascist party leader, came out and said he backs Ukraine but rules out sending troops or long-range weapons, which I thought was kind of interesting. The European Union is finalizing a security deal with Ukraine, a bilateral security deal. U.S.-made missiles for the Patriot missile system that were going to be provided to Switzerland are now reportedly going to be provided to Ukraine, which is pretty cool. Thank you, Alit Lifts, for the gift, and thank you, Moi, for the rose. What else we got here? Russia has moved almost all of its ground forces from Finland's border to Ukraine instead. That's a big deal because that, to me, sends that Russia's a little bit desperate. Northrop Grumman, an American defense contractor, plans to produce ammunition in Ukraine, bankrolled by the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian money. Denmark announced its 19th assistance package for Ukraine, including financial aid for Ukraine's defense industry, equipment for F-16 fighter jets, and donations from Danish military stocks. Ukraine's military intelligence has identified Russian soldiers who executed Ukrainian prisoners of war who had surrendered. The Russians made them lay on the ground and shot them in the back. That is a huge war crime. Civilized countries don't do that. The Ukrainian soldier allegedly beheaded by the Russians, that's another thing they reportedly did, have been identified. Again, a soldier they got their hands on and cut his head off, which is just unbelievable, but totally believable. Thank you, Jim. A Russian bot was exposed on Twitter. The Russians reportedly have been using ChatGPT to argue with people on Twitter and pretend they're human beings in order to promote Trump's candidacy, that this is part of their election involvement to promote Trump. They're actually using the ChatGPT computer program to pretend it's a person promoting Trump. And when people argue back, it argues back logically, defending Trump even more. Mark Warner, the Democratic chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, warned the British today that Russia is ramping up significantly its attacks on the British election that's coming up July 4th, akin to what they did in America back in 2016. And finally, a Russian court in Vladivostok has sentenced a U.S. military man to 3 years and 9 months in a penal colony for probably getting into a honey trap with a Russian woman when he was stationed in South Korea, and he followed her into Russia after she broke up with him like an idiot. The Russians grabbed him and now are going to do what they always do, hold him hostage until they can get some Russian super spy released. The guy's an idiot, and frankly, we should not trade for him at this point, but that's just my opinion. All right, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. Boy, we had a lot of trolls, but again, the trolls are our verisign. The trolls are our thank you, Jim. that one always kills me. The trolls are proof that we're doing something good here. So every time the Russians come and freak out, it means an angel gets its wings. So a Ukrainian angel gets its wings. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Please do come tomorrow night. I will be back here at 6 o'clock Eastern time. That's 6 o'clock Washington, D.C. or New York City time. We will talk about the latest news from Ukraine as always, and I will see you then. They're not, Dana. By the way, Dana, you're a troll too. Bye, Dana. You won't be coming back either. Bye-bye, Dana. So, no, I mean, guys, I've been doing this for 30 years. We know who the trolls are. Last point, because again, I always remember to remind people of this. Trolls are people who are usually paid, but basically come with the express purpose of throwing bombs and causing chaos. They do not come to disagree. Meaning there's people who come and they disagree. That's okay. Thank you, Ginger, for the gifts. Trolls are people who literally are like anarchists, but they're usually with a political party, usually fringe left, fringe right, or they're working for the Russians, basically. And they send them to just cause chaos and disinformation. Honestly, it's what Russia really does overall. Think of what the election stuff. We know what Russia's been doing with our elections in America. We know what they're doing in Europe. They try to sow chaos. They try to sow confusion. They try to get people angry, right? They try to make people hate each other. I mean, sometimes, by the way, sometimes the trolls will sometimes form groups that are anti-Trump as well, because they just want to piss off Republicans too. They want to just basically foment civil war in essence. That's what trolls are. So yeah. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I can smell a troll a mile away. 30 years I've been managing online communities since 1995. You're not going to probably find anybody who's been managing online communities longer than I have. Very few people were even doing this stuff in the early 1990s like I was. So anyway, my claim to fame, but that's why I call them trolls, because they are. They absolutely are. And no, well, that's exactly too. Not a botter says they try to disrupt the narrative and get you to say something. Now that's true too, and sometimes I do. Thank you, R19. But sometimes I stop because they're bringing up a point that is worth refuting. Thank you, Pizdolis, as well, for the gift. It's like worth refuting. Like they'll say something stupid about Trump or Biden, and it's worth getting into, like Biden's a crook. It's worth getting into it because it gives me a chance to correct the record and remind people of the facts. And I think I usually do it for issues that are important enough that it's important for people to know the truth. And as I've told you guys, Democrats are terrible at this. Democrats don't repeat the truth. They tell it once and they think, oh, I talked about that 3 months ago. I don't need to repeat it. I know that some of you come every night, but you may not remember everything, so it's worth repeating. Some of you are new, or some of you come once a week or once a month. So just because I said something on the show last week doesn't mean that you know what I said last week. You always have to kind of repeat yourself on things to remind people, because people remember when they hear the repetition, but also you've got to realize sometimes there's always, especially on the internet, there's always new people. So by the way, sometimes the new people are young people who are just coming of age, right? When you're 13, you didn't care. Now you're 18 and you care, or you're 20 and you're suddenly getting interested in politics and international stuff. So even though to some of us, we all know what the Russians did in 2016, somebody who was 10 in 2016 has no idea what the Russians did with the election. So anyway, this is sort of my theory on messaging. I've always believed that it can be helpful to sort of correct the record, remind people, and repeat it. But yes, part of what the trolls do is they come and they want to throw you off track. Last little story I'll tell you. Marion, who joins us, my friend Marion, who often joins us live but watches the show at night on YouTube later, Marion told us how she went to the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and she was traveling with the U.S. government. We were in law school at the time, we were doing a joint degree, a law degree, and a master's in foreign service at Georgetown, their international relations program. And Marion took a year off to work for the State Department, I believe it was State Department, going abroad to Russia and traveling around in this sort of tour of American products and computers and everything else. And it was to regular Russians. Well, one of the things the KGB would do at the time, and they were warned about it, is they would come and just try to interrupt your speech to confuse you. And she said, for example, I was giving a talk in front of like a town, like a fair, like the rural fair or the agricultural fair, those things that countries have, right? Or I forget what we call them, states fairs in America. And she goes, I would be on stage. And I think she goes, I think I was talking about a computer, because we were showcasing American computers because those were really cool. And for the Russians especially, they didn't have American computers, right? I mean, they literally had abacuses. So she goes, I'm showcasing this. And a Russian raises his hand and interrupts me and says, do you see the same moon in America that we see in Russia? And I remember asking her, and I said, why? And she goes, he's KGB. And I said, why would he ask that? She goes, they just want to F with you. They just want to screw with your head. Because she goes, it's true. You're not expecting it. It's such a weird question. It's an easy question, yes, but it's so weird that you stop and go, what? And you've now lost your train of thought, right? And it's just meant to, they want to screw with you, and they want to screw with your head. And that's what they're doing in the comments. That's what they're doing at the elections. It is all one big psychological mind F. I'm not going to say the bad word. It's a mind F. They're screwing with your head, and they just want to mess you up. So lovely people. Lovely people, the Russian government, but what do you do? Anyway, thank you, Ethan. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off because we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes here. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for the gifts. Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been fun as always. I'm actually enjoying this more lately. I don't know why. It's been getting more fun, like the conversation. Again, I'm not entirely sure why. But nonetheless, thanks, guys. I will see you all tomorrow night, okay? So join us then. Bye-bye. Goodbye, YouTube.